Alright, this is a continuation of cops chasing down a UFO creature 8 to 10 feet. This is part 2. Let's see where we left off. We have cutting edge, big picture, creates tomorrow's leader, business minded, overcoming challenges, takes charge, certain of your convictions. We have a reader, and we have success in endeavors. We have love going the extra mile, causes for celebration, achievement, military, friendship, community, and happiness. We have fix it. We have stupidity, naivety, obsession, somebody who overlooks the obvious for the sake of love, insecurity, dependence, sci-fi. We have success, which goes to your head, excessive pride, lack of recognition, thinking you are better than everybody else, punishment, appearing ignorant. We also have youthful innocence to a situation. So, with this whole thing with the police chasing down a UFO, because it was hurting people, lasers, all that shit. It's also could be time travelers, but it reminds me of that one case where those guys got abducted by UFOs, and they were being, looked at it, and it seemed like they were in a abyss where time stopped or whatever. It was like a black hole of time. So, like, a second in the real world was like 18 hours on this UFO. This UFO never took off with them in the UFO. They were being studied for 8 hours. They were having studies, scientific studies, stuff like that done on them. And they just got dropped within a second of them leaving back into the field in which they were abducted from. And they had a strange story about how the environment in which they were put in was more like a lion enclosure, and everything in there was like superficial. Like, there was people walking streets and stuff. It was like the Truman story, but everything was a mannequin. So, like, they could interact with the mannequins in there, and it was like a weird thing. It was very sci-fi oriented. But they were saying, like, the aliens that abducted them thought of them as like primal beings. Like, they would be easily amused by like toys that cats would get amused by, or like mannequins that would walk around streets or walk dogs or stuff like that, and everything was basically stuffed animals at like a carnival. So this one guy has like a photographic memory, and he remembers everything. Even though he might have been unconscious for it, he remembers what the aliens look like. So that made a big issue with the president at the time. I believe this was under Carter. And he describes in great detail what the aliens look like, what they were saying, and other stuff like that. That would be like your mind would be wiped if you were in that situation due to trauma. So this whole thing is like the weirdest. And then he gets dropped in a field right in front of his house. This field is like miles away from his house, but he gets dropped back near a field near his house within seconds of him leaving. His watch says the same time as when he left. His clock on his TV says the same time as when he left. All this stuff. The only thing that the county could tell them is that they got struck by lightning, which I find is really like contradictory. Like, these dudes, like, they got taken up in a ship, they saw all these things, they described aliens to like the point of you know, like a sketch artist would be able to find them, and they just chalked it up to a vivid imagination and they got struck by lightning. Like, there was no storms that day, there was no rain that day. The moon was out, the stars were out. They were in a field drinking, I don't know, water. They didn't want to drink beer because of they had to work the next day. So, that whole thing. It reminds me of this a lot. But these cops chasing down UFO creatures, that's so funny. That should be a movie in and of itself. But, you know, I digress. I can't really talk about the UFO in Las Vegas because of reasons. There was a mass thing that was going on there that was pointed out as conspiracy instead of what it was. So I'm not going to talk about it, but I talked about those other things, and it's kind of the same thing. But there's a lot of things surrounding that they wanted to cover up, just so there wouldn't be like public hysteria or whatever. Usually with UFOs, aliens, and stuff, it gets into public hysteria, but I don't think so. If people knew that it was like a UFO or something, they'd be really cool about it. Some people get really, really scared about certain things, but um, yeah, I mean, if there's aliens, there's aliens. If there's time travelers, there's time travelers. It's like, you know, and I believe this was around the time that they had to introduce like sci-fi to the masses. So like people didn't know what to call UFOs or aliens or anything because of lack of information, I guess. But I believe this was around the time in which they had to like drop some sci-fi media for people to watch. Anyway, I will see you in the next reading. Check this story out. It was amazing. Um, they also chalked it up to a bear attack too, which I thought was out of left field, but I digress. It's always something with government where they try to cover things up. Anyway, I will see you in the next reading. All right, later.